The dangers of edging, why you should avoid it completely. In this video, I'm going to talk about the dangers of edging and why you should avoid it completely. Hi everybody and welcome to One Mail. I'm going to talk about the dangers of edging. A lot of people don't know about the risks involved with this dangerous practice, but I'm here to warn you about them. So if you're thinking about giving edging a try, make sure to watch this video first. You might want to change your mind afterward with edging. If you're watching this, chances are you've already taken the first step in conquering your fapping addiction, acknowledging that it's a problem. Maybe you've been trying to quit for a while, but find yourself falling back into old habits. Or maybe you're not quite sure why you should give up fapping in the first place. Whatever your situation, it's important to remember that you're not alone and that there is hope. Quitting fapping can be a challenge, but it's important to keep in mind that fapping doesn't have to control your life. Just like any other addiction, it's something that you can learn to manage with time and effort. With determination and perseverance, you can overcome your fapping addiction and take back control of your life. But this video mainly focuses on why you should avoid edging. So, I will share my experience and also my opinion on this. When I started Nofap, I still had frequent urges for self-pleasure, so I thought, what if I watch it for a while but don't ejaculate? I kept my sperm and didn't lose my Nofap streak. Initially, it seemed like a good idea, but I quickly realized it was a bad idea in many ways. Relapsing is worse than etching. For those who don't know, etching is the act of touching yourself or viewing porn without achieving orgasm. First, I will explain why it's a bad idea to edge. Then, I'll explain why it's terrible for your body and mind. I'm even going to use science to prove my point. After that, I'll give you a bonus etching tip that I haven't heard from anyone else. So, if that's something you're interested in, keep an eye on. Okay, let's get started, guys. First, let's get the obvious guns out of the way. Because you didn't ejaculate, the first etching makes it more difficult to resist the temptation. You'll still feel compelled to do masturbation. Even if you only watch it, you might mess up and ejaculate after this. Trust me, I've messed this up a few times, and I can tell you that it makes you feel foolish afterward. Now that we've gotten the obvious reasons, let me explain why etching is so dangerous. This is related to two neurotransmitters called dopamine and oxytocin. I'm going to start with dopamine because the etching effect on your dopamine receptors is, in my opinion, the most harmful. This has something to do with the process known as homeostasis. Homeostasis is the tendency of the body to monitor and maintain internal states. In order to keep things from getting too crazy inside, organisms and cells have a built-in mechanism called homeostasis. In other words, it's the body's capacity to maintain internal consistency in the face of environmental disturbances. Our bodies respond when it gets colder by reducing their metabolic rate to produce more heat. Because of homeostasis, our internal environment can stay relatively stable despite fluctuations in the external one. This is crucial to our survival because it ensures our bodies can carry out their intended functions. Without homeostasis, we would perish in a matter of days because we couldn't adjust to the constantly shifting conditions around us. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that plays a crucial role in the brain's reward system. When we experience something pleasurable, dopamine is released, reinforcing the behavior leading to pleasure. This is why we feel compelled to repeat activities that make us feel good. However, when dopamine homeostasis is disrupted, it can lead to addiction. In the case of dopamine, this means that your body wants to keep your dopamine level stable while watching mature content. Studies have shown that pornography consumption can change how the brain responds to dopamine, leading to an increased tolerance for stimulation. Therefore, your dopamine receptors will be activated, and you will release a large amount of dopamine. This means that users need to watch more and more mature content to get the same feeling of pleasure. In addition, they may also start to experience cravings and withdrawal symptoms when they try to stop. If you remove a large amount of dopamine, your body will respond by reducing the number of dopamine receptors. Typically, self-pleasuring is terrible enough, but you aren't actually climaxing when you edge. This usually indicates that you've been watching pornography for an extended period. Every minute you watch, your body releases more dopamine, so the more you watch, the more dopamine your body releases. As previously stated, this means that the number of dopamine receptors decreases. As a result, the more content you watch, the fewer dopamine receptors you have. Now I'll explain why that is so dangerous to your life. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that plays an important role in motivation and reward-seeking behavior. When we accomplish a goal or receive a reward, dopamine is released, which helps to motivate us to continue pursuing our goals. However, when levels of dopamine are low, we may feel less motivated and have less energy. This can lead to procrastination and make it difficult to stick to our goals. While there are many factors that can influence dopamine levels, including stress and sleep deprivation, making sure we have enough of this critical neurotransmitter is essential for staying motivated and achieving our goals. In a scientific study with rats, researchers discovered that the rats required dopamine 1 and dopamine 2 receptors to make effort decisions. When the rats' dopamine receptors were too low, the rats could not make effective decisions, resulting in inaction. This explains why you have a significant drop in energy and motivation after watching a lot of content. Because of the decreased number of dopamine receptors in your brain, everything in your life becomes less enjoyable. So, by etching, you significantly reduce the number of dopamine receptors, which reduces your motivation and energy, making it much more challenging to work on your goals and other essential things in your life. So, while this should be reason enough not to edge, there's another. This has something to do with the neurotransmitter oxytocin. Oxytocin is also known as the love hormone. According to a scientific study on the release of oxytocin, when you watch mature content, your oxytocin levels will rise. Because oxytocin is thought to cement pair bonding, it can make quitting even more difficult for some people. If these rumors are true, you can develop a bond with them if you watch a lot of X videos of a particular type. I know it sounds strange, but it could be an explanation for some people's fetishes. I wanted to confirm this with science, so I combed dozens of scientific papers for you, but I couldn't find any compelling evidence. However, I did come across this idea, which I believe you will find very interesting. Oxytocin is often called the love hormone because it plays a vital role in social bonding, sexual reproduction, and childbirth. It's also been shown to positively affect stress and anxiety levels. However, recent research has suggested that too much oxytocin can have negative consequences. One study found that men who frequently engaged in self-stimulation, known as fapping, had lower levels of oxytocin than those who didn't. The researchers speculated that the drop in oxytocin might explain why some men who engage in excessive fapping find it challenging to form close attachments to others. While the effects of fapping on oxytocin levels are not yet fully understood, the findings of this study suggest that too much self-stimulation can lead to social isolation and anxiety. In addition, scientists believe that during orgasm, a dopamine-oxytocin combination is released in the brain, acting as a biochemical love potion, as behavioral therapist Andrea Kosiewski refers to it. It's why, after having intercourse with someone, you're more likely to form an emotional attachment, but you don't have to have intercourse to get those neurotransmitters firing. When you watch it, you bond with it. Those chemicals make you want to keep coming back to have that feeling, which allows men to not only get high on pornography but also potentially develop a neurological attachment to it. In essence, they can date pornography. It may sound strange, but this made a lot of sense to me, though scientists are still speculating about it. That means it's possible, but they haven't confirmed it yet. Please let me know in the comments if you believe this is true. Let's move on to the bonus tip. I've etched a couple of times now, and as I previously stated, whenever I craved, I always had a wet dream the next day. So I believe etching increases the likelihood of having a wet dream. It could have been a coincidence, but it happened every time, so I'm convinced that etching increases the possibility of having a wet dream. So remember this every time you say that you would watch it and not waste sperm. The first etching makes it harder to resist the urge because you didn't ejaculate. You'll still feel compelled to do masturbation. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is a vital part of the reward system in the brain. When we do something that makes us feel good, dopamine is released. This keeps us doing the thing that makes us feel good. If you get rid of a lot of dopamine, your body will respond by producing fewer dopamine receptors. Most of the time, this means you've been watching it for a long time. But when dopamine levels are low, we may feel less motivated and have less energy. This makes it much harder to work on your goals and other essential things in your life. You may also find it challenging to form close attachments to others. When you watch it, you bond with it. Those chemicals make you want to keep coming back to have that feeling, which allows men to not only get high on pornography but also potentially develop a neurological attachment to it. And when you say to yourself that you will just watch it, obviously you won't just be contented with watching it. You will always fall into the trap. And it would just be a tiring cycle. Be sure to end that cycle and take your opportunity to lead your life. If you are considering abstaining from self-gratification and pornography, you need to know the Nofap truth. In this video, I share some of the most important things you need to know about Nofap before making your decision.